tonight. The Premier heads to China this weekend with company from the federal government. Why some people with disabilities are facing judgment while using accessible parking.
Usually you get a glare.
And cases of Dutch elm disease are skyrocketing in the province. We find out why.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Thursday, September 4th, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. I'm Ethan Williams. Thank you for joining us. Premier Scott Moe is set to fly to China this weekend as he launches a trade mission in response to that country's tariffs on Canadian canola. And as Alexander Kwan reports, he'll have a federal MP joining him.
Thank you to Prime Minister Carney for prioritizing this mission and ensuring that we are working together.
It will no longer be just Saskatchewan officials heading to China this week. Premier Scott Moe will now be joined by Nova Scotia MP Cody Blois on his trade mission. Blois serves as the Prime Minister's parliamentary secretary, and it's a decision Moe says signals the close collaboration between the governments.
That is a positive, I think, not only for the mission, but a positive for where we can get to in the broader opportunities that we might have with a country like China.
Moe is attempting to respond to a punishing tariff announced by China last month, targeting canola, one of Saskatchewan and Canada's most valuable crops. China says its 76% duty on Canadian canola seed is because Canada is dumping its canola and hurting its domestic market. But the tariff is widely seen as a response to Canada's 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles. Moe said the mission is important, but a resolution to the dispute will have to come from Carney and Chinese President Xi Jinping.
What we are making every effort to do is to bring the opportunity for that conversation of a closer trading relationship between Canada, specifically Saskatchewan agriculture, and China.
The official opposition say the effort is coming too little, too late.
This trip was thrown together last minute. Looking at the results of the devastating tariffs on our canola products, I'm here to simply ask, why has this taken so long?
Ottawa has taken little action in response to the Chinese canola tariffs, but the statement announcing Blois' role also promised a change in tone, saying, quote, the government will announce additional measures in support of Canadian producers shortly. Saskatchewan's trade minister is set to carry out a parallel mission to South Korea before joining up with Moe for the final 3 days of the journey. The goal with those countries is to expand the market for all goods produced in Saskatchewan. The Premier's flight takes off on Saturday. Alexander Kwan, CBC News, Regina.
Saskatchewan RCMP say they have not laid any charges against any of the people arrested in Richmound. Police arrested 16 people in the dramatic raid on an abandoned school compound in the village Wednesday. All 16 have now been released from custody. 2 of them have since been rearrested. RCMP say charges could still be laid even though those arrested have been released. Officers found 13 imitation handguns on the school property, as well as ammunition and a large number of electronic devices. 2 people, including a suspect, are dead and 7 others are in hospital following a stabbing on a First Nation northeast of Winnipeg. It happened on Hollow Water First Nation. RCMP were first called around 4 a.m. Thursday. An 18-year-old woman was stabbed to death. Her brother, a 26-year-old, was killed as he fled the community in a stolen vehicle, colliding with an RCMP SUV. An officer in that vehicle was seriously injured but is expected to fully recover. Manitoba's Premier says the province will be there for the community.
A community that did nothing to deserve this, a community that's full of great people that I've had the pleasure to visit on many occasions. We will be there with a swift and strong response to ensure that there is safety in the immediate sense, but we'll also be there with the compassion and support to ensure that there's safety there in the longer term sense.
Canoe also says this incident hit a personal note for his cabinet. The province's Minister of Natural Resources is from Hollow Water First Nation. Canoe did not say if he is connected to any of the victims. A town and rural municipality just outside of Regina say they were defrauded of nearly $700,000. It happened after a fraudster impersonated the wastewater authority jointly owned by the town of White City and RM of Edenwold. The town lost $200,000 and the RM nearly $500,000. It was discovered at the end of July, and the municipalities say they immediately notified the RCMP and the banks involved. They say no systems were breached and ratepayers' personal information was not compromised. More than 8 million Canadians live with a disability, and many of them rely on accessible parking. But for those whose disability isn't immediately noticeable, using those spaces can come with public judgment and online shaming. Aaliyah Marco Omene has that story.
A simple task like unloading the dishwasher can be a challenge for Jenna Sittler. She's lived with chronic pain, fatigue, and a condition that affects her voice for over a decade. But you wouldn't necessarily know that on first impression. Sittler says her invisible disability makes her feel anxious to do certain things, like using accessible parking stalls.
I am afraid that someone's going to approach me and I'm not physically or mentally in any spot to handle that, and like what that might do for my day or my health for the rest of the day. So right now it's kind of like, depending on how mentally strong I feel, will I use it?
Sittler says people often stare at her when she parks in an accessible stall. She often chooses to park further away to avoid that. And she's not the only one who's experienced this. Bart Harder suffered a spinal cord injury in 1998. He's lost the full use of his right shoulder and both hands. Harder says he's been called out many times for using an accessible stall.
People walk by and it's not so much when they say anything, but usually you get a glare or, you get that scoff where somebody's like, you shouldn't be using that.
Saskability says there isn't one type of specific disability that makes somebody eligible for an accessible parking permit. There are 3 basic types of permits: 1 year, 3 year, and lifelong. Each of those requires a form to be filled out by a medical professional. And while Saskability says a permit could be used by somebody who doesn't need it, those cases are rare. Jonathan Tremblay's youngest son was diagnosed with a rare genetic neuromuscular disorder in 2019. He says since then, he's realized many people still define disability as one thing.
It's a person that wears their disability on the outside and almost wears a flag saying, I am all disabled people. I think there's no nuance there, whereas the community is extremely nuanced.
Tremblay says people may think they're being a disability advocate by confronting drivers in accessible parking stalls, but they may actually be confronting someone with a disability and isolating them more. Bart Harder says he wishes more people would understand that disability permits aren't just given out to anyone. He says it's not always easy having to explain his disability to others, but he continues to do it for one reason. After a while, it gets annoying telling the same story over and over and over. But if you can get one person changed, then it's good. They can look out for different signs. Aaliyah Marco Omene, CBC News, Regina.
The city of Saskatoon is closer to demolishing a horse race facility in town, but its future beyond that purpose is still unknown. Jeremy Warren has more.
If you want to make a wager, your best bet is on the demolition of Marquis Downs. Horse races haven't happened there for 5 years. Now Prairieland Park is asking the city for permission to tear up the racetrack and tear down the grandstand and horse barns. A City Hall report says the demolition should go ahead. On Wednesday, a city committee accepted that recommendation and sent it to City Council for final approval. Prairieland Park says the buildings at Marquis Downs aren't usable without major renovations. The plan after demolition? Install a gravel parking lot. For now, the long-term future is uncertain. Marquis Downs hosted live thoroughbred horse racing for nearly 50 years. In 2021, Prairieland permanently canceled horse racing. Victoria Kendall grew up hanging around Marquis Downs. The former horse breeder says it was a hub for the province's horse industry.
You had opportunities for young people that want to get involved with the industry to be able to come out and earn a few dollars, shoveling stalls, grooming horses. They gain experience. They get to throw a leg over every now and then. They learn a career as a jockey. They maybe progress into becoming trainers themselves.
A $28 million plan to build a soccer stadium with Living Sky Sports and bring a pro team to Saskatoon has stalled. Prairieland Park says it's working on a master plan to develop the site. It leases roughly 130 acres from the city for $100 a year. That lease doesn't expire until 2045. Jeremy Warren, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Well, it was a windy one for many of us on Thursday. The city of Swift Current was no exception. It is definitely making things feel more and more like fall, especially as those leaves begin to change color as well. Helena Mahalik will tell us if we are in for more of this fall-like weather or if there is a warm-up in store. Stay with us. We're back after the break. Cases of Dutch elm disease have been on the rise across the province. The latest update from the city of Regina puts the number of cases in that city at 34, including 2 in Wascana Centre, the most cases in 1 year the park has ever recorded. This comes after the city broke a record last year for the number of cases in a single year. In Saskatoon, the situation is just as bad, with that city warning last week of a potential ecological emergency as a result. For more on Dutch elm disease in Saskatoon, we are joined by Tai Huang. He is the Director of Parks for the city. Tai, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So how many cases do we know of in Saskatoon at this point?
So far, we have 12 lab-confirmed cases in Saskatoon, and we have about 7 cases that are presumptive, where the trees are showing all of the classic symptoms quite readily, and so our teams have gone ahead and scheduled those for proactive removal at this point.
So what's causing the high number of cases, especially this year?
So this is something that has kind of increased over the last 2 or 3 years here. We had several years of drought conditions as well as heat conditions that have made the trees more susceptible to disease. And it really comes down to people storing elm wood, transporting elm wood, and the prevalence of the elm bark beetle that is one of the primary vectors of the disease.
So you're now warning of an ecological emergency as cases rise. What exactly does that term mean? What does that look like?
In Saskatoon, our elms make up 25% of our total city-owned trees. So we have, nearly 30,000 trees within the city here, just the city-owned ones, that are elm. So this is a disease that can do quite a bit of havoc to that population, and we have a very large number of trees that are susceptible to it. So it could very well change the landscape of our city.
And how exactly does this disease spread? We've heard so much about Dutch elm disease, but how exactly does it get from tree to tree?
So there's 2 ways of spread. Basically, the first is, and probably the primary way of spreading it, is the elm bark beetle, which will fly from tree to tree, spreading the fungus that way. And then the other thing that can happen is through root grafting, where trees that are close to one another, if their root systems are close enough to transmit the disease, it can also go that way.
So you mentioned, of course, environmental factors causing issues and causing the case numbers to rise, but what is the city doing to address this problem?
So this year we've done some proactive elm storage sweeps. So our teams have been out in neighborhoods doing sweeps through yards to make sure that people, if we have people who have stored elm wood, that we're disposing of it safely. And also within the area 1 kilometer radius of trees that are confirmed positive, we also do sweeps in those areas to make sure that we remove as much stored elm wood as possible. The other primary tool that we have in our toolkit is rapid removal. So as soon as we find out that a tree is positive and or suspect that it's positive, we'll either proactively remove or do our best to ensure that tree is removed as quickly as possible to prevent further disease. Going back to just overall care and maintenance of our trees, pruning cycles, ensuring that those are on time, help us ensure that the trees are just less susceptible to it.
And what can residents do to help the situation?
So with residents, again, do not store or transport elm wood or branches. And also observe the pruning ban between April 1st and August 31st of each year. We are informing people that, this year it's unseasonably warm weather at the end of the season here, so we do recommend waiting just a little bit longer so that the elm bark beetles are not as active, but do abide by the ban. And then as well, dispose of elm at safely at the landfill. So we have a program in Saskatchewan here where people are able to dispose of elm wood. Private homeowners can dispose of elm wood free of charge. So.
Okay, Ty, thank you so much for this.
Thanks so much.
Ty Huang is the Director of Parks for the City of Saskatoon. And weather specialist Helena Mahalik joins us now. I'm noticing that some of the leaves on those trees, Helena, are starting to fall, especially in the very strong winds that we've had.
Yeah, Ethan, it was an incredibly windy day today. I was getting blown around on my walk to work. We even had some wind warnings in place. Let's take a look at some of our maximum wind speeds in the province. Estevan, in the southeast corner of the province, is where those wind warnings were in place. That part of the province had wind gusts up to 90 kilometers an hour. The entire province was seeing a northwesterly flow. The rest of the south wasn't too far behind. Central areas like Saskatoon got close to 70 kilometers an hour, and up north just over 50 kilometers an hour. So definitely a breezy day for the entire province. Lots of leaves getting blown to and fro. I did see a few garbage cans toppled over on my way to work as well. And here's a fun fact for you. With wind gusts up to 107 kilometers an hour, that's enough to move an average person. We definitely got close to that in the southeast today. Not quite windy enough to move a car, thankfully. As for the rest of the province, Thursday evening, we are seeing a chance of some showers in south and central in the eastern part of the province, just along the Manitoba border there. And into Friday, we're going to again see the chance of some showers in that area for areas close to Manitoba, this time closer to the northern grain belt for areas around Prince Albert. But that system is moving out into the weekend, and Saturday is going to be a nice clear day as we begin our weekend. As we get into Sunday, we're just going to see some cloud coverage moving in and maybe a chance of some showers in the far north there. We're definitely not going to have as breezy of a day into the next few days. Friday, we'll just see a bit of a breeze in the southeast, but only up to 40 kilometers an hour wind gusts for areas around Estevan there. And then as we get into the weekend, those winds are really dying down. But our overnight lows Thursday night are going to be incredibly chilly. We're going to be closer to the freezing mark for many areas, so you might want to check on your gardens, especially if you can bring some plants inside. In the southwest there, we're going to be closer to freezing, getting close to that mark, and then areas like Saskatoon and Regina, a little bit closer to 5 degrees. Northern Saskatchewan, this model is showing a little bit warmer, but we do have the potential to get into freezing there as well. And we are going to be seeing some rainfall in that part of the province, again, closer to the Manitoba border there. So Ethan, definitely a chilly night tonight, really feeling like fall in the province.
But no more wind to move a person across the ground then?
No, and no moving cars either.
None. Okay. Thank you, Helena.
Thanks, Ethan.
The First Nations University of Canada has opened a brand new space at its Regina campus. The university's new career center is officially open. The office promises to not only help students move into lifelong careers, but also summer jobs and internships that strengthen resumes. Students will be offered mentorship, advising, workshops, and access to an online job board.
This career center will be a bridge between the university and the workforce, and it'll also help identify and provide students with opportunities like summer employment, co-op opportunities, internship, and which will all help develop their resume for the workforce.
Morris says the center is already seeing interest from potential employers. Well, one of the most recognizable figures in the global fashion industry has died. Italian designer Giorgio Armani passed away on Thursday. Armani put Italian ready-to-wear style on the international fashion map in the late 70s. He soon turned the concept of understated elegance into a multi-billion-dollar fashion empire. Stay with us. We have more news after the break. The Saskatchewan Roughriders are looking for their first Banjo Bowl win since 2018. The Riders have struggled in Winnipeg over the last decade. A major key for the green and white will be trying to once again limit Brady Oliveira. The former league MVP running back was held to just 24 yards on the ground in last week's Labor Day Classic, but the team says they are preparing for a bigger workload this time around.
That's one spot I don't think we can hold much weight on. I think the amount of activity Brady got this past game, I don't think he'll definitely be more involved coming into this week right here. He's a hell of a back. So for us, we were prepared for it coming in last week, and we'll be even more prepared for it this week.
He's going to get his fair dose of carries and or touch the ball one way or another. So, man, just got to be detail oriented and be where we're supposed to be, and tackle by population on a good back like that.
The Riders also continue to maintain a clean bill of health. There were no new injury updates on Thursday. Kickoff for the sold-out Banjo Bowl is 2 o'clock on Saturday in Winnipeg. And Helena's back with a weather forecast that feels like fall football in Saskatchewan, doesn't it?
It really does, yeah. It's really starting to feel like fall in the province, but will it stick around? Let's take a look at the forecast for the city of Regina. It will be sunny all week long, and until about Monday, our overnight lows are still going to be pretty chilly, closer to the freezing mark. We are going to be hovering in the mid to high teens, and then as we get out of our weekend, we're seeing a big jump in temperatures, and we're actually going to be back to some more summer-like conditions, and that's going to last into next week. So maybe you can enjoy the outdoor pool still if you're in Regina. There's a slight chance of rain next Wednesday, temperatures dropping down to the low 20s, and our overnight lows will be returning to the mid-teens. In Saskatoon, the sun will also be out all week long. Again, some very cool overnight lows and daytime highs still in the mid to high teens, but by Sunday we're jumping up above 20 degrees and going to stay that way all week long. A slight chance of rain into next week, but temperatures will still be hovering in those mid-20s with overnight lows above 10 degrees. So Ethan, I think summer is coming back after all.
Yeah, one last gasp, or maybe two more, who knows. Thanks, Helena.
Thanks, Ethan.
And that is our news for this Thursday. For news anytime, you can always head to cbc.ca/Sask or subscribe to our CBC Saskatchewan YouTube channel. And you can also download the CBC News app on your smartphone or tablet. Thanks so much for watching.